In this video, I'm gonna build an aquarium for breeding Neocoridina shrimp, and I'll show you guys how I breed hundreds of stunning blue cherry shrimp in this tank within just 4 months. Let's get started. It's not a secret, I have a multi-tank syndrome and I can't afford to buy aquariums, so the most of the tanks I'm building myself, including this one. So I made this tank very shallow, only 10 inches tall, because I'm gonna place it on top of my rack and I don't have much space there. Once I was done with the tank, I built a very simple UGF box in the corner using only 2 pieces of glass. And for the filtration media, I went with lava rock. It has a good amount of surface area and it doesn't leach anything into the water column. Our lava rocks are quite big size, so now let's use this big boy to make them smaller. This is what we got now, small rocks roughly half an inch size, plenty of surface area for bacteria to colonize, so the next step was to fill our UGF with that small lava rocks we just made. I was very happy with how this tank turned out. The shallow tanks looks really awesome, I never had them before. Alright, our tank already looks good. I just added frosted film to the back of the tank. So now it's time to add some bacterial powder and then we can fill this tank with the water and start our cycle. So now I'm gonna sprinkle 3 or 4 grams of bacterial powder on. The main purpose of this powder is just to grow the green walls in your tank, and green walls are very beneficial for the shrimp because this is actually the food for baby shrimp. I almost forgot just before we fill this tank with the water, it's better to spray a little bit of water on the bacterial powder. So this way you're gonna keep this bacterial powder on the surface once you fill this tank with the water. It's been only 8 days since we set this tank up and this tank developing very well. And take a look at this insane result. This tank is just over 1 week old and look at this amazing result. The dust green algae covering everything here. And guys, before I thought we need an active soil to grow this green walls algae. Like in this tank, you see we have an active soil and we have a loss of green walls. So I thought the active soil released that nutrients for green walls to grow. But no, we just need a bacterial powder. That's all we need. In the beginning, once I filled this tank with the water, I also added a little bit of household ammonia, just a half a milliliter to make this test tube slightly green. And we need this ammonia in the tank to feed the nitrifying bacteria and to get our tank properly cycled. But if you don't have ammonia, you can just dose the fish flake food in your tank. Just pretend you have a fish and just feed your tank. So now I'm going to test the water in this tank weekly and wait for ammonia to go away. And once we don't have any ammonia reading in this tank, that means it's cycled and we can add some shrimp. So I'm gonna get back to you once this tank is ready. And this is how our tank looks now after 4 weeks and it's been fully cycled. I also added some plants inside this tank. You can see I have a hookah moss on the coconut shell. We have a flame moss on top of the UGF and we have a bucephalandra on lava rock. So it is a perfect breeding setup for Neocoridina shrimp. And speaking of shrimp, let me show you what we're gonna add here. And here's the tank where we're gonna get our shrimp from. This is my beautiful planted tank with the Blue Dream Neocoridina shrimp. And the shrimps are doing great, they breed, but not as much as I want them to breed, because this tank is more designed for plants. This is more like aquascape setup, not the breeding setup. And I want to breed the shrimps as maximum as possible. I'm more like a shrimp person rather than plant person. So that's why I want to move the shrimps into our new breeding setup and hopefully they're gonna breed a lot there. Look at this, guys. Here we have 150 of Blue Dream Neocoridina shrimp I've got from this tank, and they're all going to our new breeding setup. So now let's put them in their new home. Our shrimp just settled in new home and they already started exploring new tank. We have quite a lot of shrimp here now, but it's never enough for me. I always want to see more. Now they have plenty of natural food in this tank and I'm not gonna feed them for at least a few weeks. I want them to clean all that biofilm first, and looks like they're more than happy to do that for me. So now I'm gonna let them settle in this tank and grow their numbers, and then after a few months I'm gonna get back to you with the final update. And this is how a tank looks now after 3 months. Take a look at this result. This tank is thriving and I absolutely love it. The only changes I made, I added a little sponge filter to this tank, mainly just to polish the water and make it more clear. The shrimp population now doubled in size and they are very active. We don't have any algae here apart from the green walls, but we want these green walls. It's natural food for the shrimp, and that's why we dose that bacterial powder to provide the dust algae and biofilm with some nutrients to grow. Some of the shrimp in this tank have very interesting coloration. Just look at this one, for example. It's a blue shrimp, but some parts of your body are painted red. It looks amazing. I love these blue cherry shrimp. They are my favorite Neocorydinia for sure. The plants have grown a lot since my last update. Look at the amount of flame moss on top of the UJF filter. It takes like 3/4 of the tank and now it's touching the water surface. The hookah moss also stretched by a lot and both of the mosses looks very green and very healthy. We have the same good result with Bucephalandra on lava rock. Amazing growth. I'm honestly a little bit surprised because remember, we don't have active soil here and I'm not dosing any fertilizers or adding CO2, yet the plants are still growing insanely well. And you know, if your plant's flourishing, your shrimp will flourish as well. That means we have a balanced ecosystem here, and this ecosystem is full of microfauna. One of them being a seed shrimps, tiny organisms, and I quite like them, they look funny. They like to gather in one particular corner of this tank, like they're having party there. The copypods are also like to join the party. They're a little bit smaller than seed shrimp and they move much faster. The other tiny creatures we have here are detritus worms. They play an essential role in the ecosystem by feeding on decaying organic matter and maintaining the water quality. And since we don't have a substrate for them to live in, most of the time they just float in the water column. And now let's quickly talk about tank maintenance. I always use raw water in all my shrimp tanks, and this tank is not exception because my tap water isn't good enough. And to prepare the new water for the water change, I simply mix salty shrimp GHKH plus minerals in a bucket with raw water until I reach TDS in the range between 230 to 150 parts per million. In my Neocorydinia tanks, I normally change around 30-40% of water every 2 weeks, and I clean the tanks at the same time. Normally in the tanks with a substrate, most of the shrimp waste sinks into the substrate over the time and you don't need to clean it much, but in a bare bottom setup like this one, all of the shrimp waste stay at the bottom of the tank and you have to clean it, otherwise it's gonna look terrible and it's not gonna be healthy for shrimp. So when I do my water change, I siphon all the waste with the tube from the bottom of the tank and then I slowly pump fresh water back into the tank to avoid stressing the shrimp. After the water change, I typically sprinkle some bacterial powder on the water surface to maintain algae growth and to feed the baby shrimp. I have lots of shrimp in this tank and they get hungry very quickly, so I feed them daily with solid foods. And this is when the all fun begins, watching hundreds of shrimp rush from every corner of the tank, competing with each other for the food and trying to grab a piece and run away. And guys, even though I prefer Corydinia shrimp over any other shrimp, Neocorydinia were my very first shrimp, so they hold a special place in my heart. And I know some of you don't agree with me, but for me, keeping shrimp is all about growing a large colony of shrimp and enjoying daily feeding time. That's why I prefer this very simple bare bottom setup with just the mosses over the heavily planted tank like I used to have. Here I can observe my shrimp more easily, and if anything happens or any dead shrimp, I can spot it straight away. Thank you so much for watching. Also, YouTube thinks you're gonna like this video. They put it on the screen because they're like, oh, this person really gonna enjoy it. So click it. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.